No surprise here, but my first love of Linklater is Before Sunrise from 1995, starring Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy. Quick logline: a young man and woman meet on a train in Europe and wind up spending one evening together in Vienna. Unfortunately, both know that this will probably be their only night together. So this is the beginning of what ends up becoming an amazing trilogy over the course of time. But this was my first intro to him. I'd heard about this movie, I'd heard friends talk about it, and the premise of it, as it was stated to me, sort of sounded kind of boring and not very interesting. So I didn't watch this movie. I want to say not until like the 2010s, I think. So pretty late in my life. I'd not seen any Linklater movie until then and was just
Hmm.
completely blown away by the movie. Kind of what we were talking in the intro, like this is my intro to that, of just
Mm.
dialogue that is just so alive and captivating. And even though you can sort of tell that there is no plot, but you can't wait to find out what's going to happen. And that's such a genius thing, right? Like, how do you create anticipation and excitement even though you sort of know at some level that this is just a hangout vibe thing that's going on? And to me, that's because the writing is amazing, the movie is cut and it looks great, it pulls you in. And then the performances, like it really shows that this is a movie where the stars and the leads, they wrote this movie along with the director. Even if you didn't know that, you feel it because they just make this dialogue their own. It just feels so natural, so alive, and their chemistry, their personalities, they just come together just so beautifully on screen. I know there are camps of people who like the second one better, and I can totally see that argument. But for me, this will always be my first love of Linklater and my favorite of the trilogy because it's just so fresh and unique. I also have a special relationship with Vienna from, living there a little bit and holiday trips and such. So yeah, this and it's just so fun to see the two of them, Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, just young and fresh and alive. And it's great to see what the two of them, especially Ethan Hawke, is going to turn into. It almost feels like he and this character are kind of mirror images of themselves, which is kind of a fun thing. I know you watched this movie when I introduced it on the podcast.
Yeah, the first time I'd seen this was
Yeah,
in our Meaning of Love episode, the one,
yeah,
you brought this one in. And actually, I'll post a link to that below in case
uh
people want
huh.
to hear more discussion about this film. But yeah, I had similar to you, like I had a lot of friends that said, you got to see this, you got to see this. And it just, because I had that initial aversion to Linklater because of Slacker when I was in high school, I never was wanting to rush out to watch this. And I think with hangout movies, they're not usually my favorite type of film, and they're hard because if you don't want to hang out with these people, the movie sucks, at least for me. So, but if you want to hang out with them,
I
it's
couldn't
awesome,
agree more.
and this was a movie where I was it spoke to me a lot. I really enjoyed it a lot when you introduced it, and I think it is because like you want to hang out with these people even though they're not really talking about anything. It's just you want to listen in on the conversation. It's like you're sometimes it's fun at a restaurant where you hear people having an interesting conversation. You're
Hmm.
sort of like pretending not to listen, but you're listening. It's kind of like that. You feel like you're, spying on these two strangers and just wanting to know, okay, well, where's this gonna go? So there is that narrative drive in that sense. You're like, okay, these are strangers. They're kind of hitting off, but like, what is this gonna mean? Are they like there's a ticking clock here. That's the point of the movie, right? Before sunrise, like when the sunrise
Hmm.
comes up, they're gone. Like they have to depart. So they have that sort of narrative interest that is keeping your interest the whole time. But yeah, I think this movie works really well also just as a meet cute, which is I also like you too, like those types of
Yeah.
movies where it's just like two random people meet and then you just find this connection and hit it off, which is an exciting part of life. And maybe you never see this person again, and really that's okay. Honestly, at the end of the day, you had that time, and then being an audience member, seeing that time, it just reminds you a lot of those different people you might have met on a train once and talk for 20 minutes, or, an afternoon with someone who you never see this person again. But there's something special about that, and it's an important part of
Hmm.
life. And I think this movie perfectly captures that, and the style of Linklater, of his chill hangout movies that look like they're totally unscripted, even though they really are, I think lends itself really well to this type of film.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like that piece of the meet cute, especially in a place like Europe, I think it's a fantasy that a lot of people have. I certainly have had that fantasy. And I don't know if the movie
Hmm.
came first or the fantasy came first, but there's something very inherently charming and fascinating, especially at that age that these people are.
Hmm.
And of course, this can happen at any age, but it doesn't even have to be Europe, but somewhere that's not home.
Right.
That fantasy of like forming a connection with somebody is sort of, yeah, it's magical, right? Like
Hmm.
it's that spark that not that people are looking for in their lives, but they certainly imagine. So I
Yeah.
think this movie really captures that. And then to your other point of, do you want to hang out with these people or no, I think that's so critical. It's such a great point. I have not seen Slacker and some of the earlier movies that Linklater did, because I just feel like they'll probably be more broy, and maybe that's the kind of group that I just don't want to hang out with. I think, and I should see those movies before I have an
Yeah. Yeah.
opinion, but I feel like there's something about this movie where Linklater is in his age and his career, and the fact that it's a trio working together.
Hmm.
There's something about that, because usually his collaborations have been with men. And I think there's something about Julie Delpy coming in as a writer, as a collaborator, that does something to this movie and this trilogy. That's why this trilogy kind of hangs out a little bit differently, even
Hmm.
though there are many movies of this kind that he's done, and we'll go over some of those. But there's something special about having, that quote unquote sort of female point of view, or maybe where Linklater was in his life, where pondering about love was an important theme that he was, jumping up against, as opposed to earlier, maybe the themes that he was interested in were different.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in terms of the themes, and you mentioned like time and younger people, like these two folks were definitely younger. I think for me as well, one of the things that just doesn't work sometimes with Richard Linklater movies is I feel like a lot of the times his worldview is kind of stuck in what I would categorize, and maybe this is mean, but like freshman in college sort of pseudo intellectualism, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I find kind of boring and little
I
like
can see that.
eggheaded.
Yeah.
But because these folks, these two people in this movie are of that age, that's what you talk about when you're like 20,
Right.
22. You have these grand sort of like philosophical thoughts and conversations, which again, maybe this is mean to say, but I sort of feel like is a little, yeah, like you think about it when you're younger, but then once you get older, it's like, okay, like this is not, what you really should be thinking. But for me, that's why this movie does work, because it's like, okay, this stuff's coming out of their mouth that if this was someone who was like 30 or 40 or 50, I'd be like, okay, like, come on, be serious
Yeah.
here. Like, don't be such a kid. But they're kids, and it works, and it does kind of pull me along. Another thing that I also really like about this movie too is the ending of it, where
Mm-hmm.
they leave and they make a promise. Oh, like, we're gonna get back together, in 10 years, and then the movie's just over. And then it's like, okay, well, either the romantics can think, oh, they met, this is like their true love, and they're gonna get back together, and this is gonna be fairy tale ending. And then the cynics can be like, yeah, they're never gonna see each other again. That was a
Yeah.
thing. And like both sort of worldviews get what they want at the end of this movie, because the movie doesn't say. I mean, we'll get on to kind of how this trilogy develops,
Mm-hmm.
right? But with just the movie on its own, I love how that ending is just like, yeah, let's meet
Right.
up again. Oh yeah, totally. And there's been tons of people I've been like, oh yeah, I'll definitely see you again, and like you never see them again. And
Didn't have
that's
to
just
them.
also the way that the world works. And I love that ambiguity at the end of this film. Again, let's put the trilogy aside because they do sort of answer this question later. But as this movie ends, it's just such a magical sort of realistic ending that any worldview can grab onto. Say, see, these people are never going to see each other again. This is, if it was true love, they would have, they would never have left each other. And then the romantics can be like, oh my God, this is their true love, and they're gonna meet up, and they're eventually gonna be together. I
Yeah.
like that.
No, I love that, which is what I missed in the Hitman ending. That's what I'm talking
Oh,
about. Ambiguous, not tied in a bow, and it sort of leaves you, I'm in the other camp, so
oh,
of people. So I didn't
I
get
want
that.
I'm the romantic. So and when I saw this movie, even though I knew obviously when I watched this for the podcast, the first time that there were going to be other ones and that there were,
Mm-hmm.
but even if I didn't, I definitely would have been like, okay, well, this is great. Like they're definitely going to see each other because that was a you know, special moment that they
Exactly.
serendipitously were together, which Hitman gave me that. So but, I
That's
totally
true.
see what you mean. Yeah, this definitely has the ambiguity, which I also think is beautiful in this film too. Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.